Oh, here we go.
Welcome to the now. Welcome to the Holistic Kid Show. My name is Zane.
My name's
And
Abdullah.
my name's Imad.
We're the Holistic Kids here to educate us kids from the inside out.
Zan, there are so many tips out there. Do this, don't do this, and it can really get overwhelming about what we should actually do in our real life.
I know, Ahmad. With my busy schedule, some things are practical and others just aren't. And we have learned a lot as we are almost at our 2 year podcast anniversary. And today is episode 65.
Yes, we have learned a lot. It's been so much fun.
But what happens if we get to 600 episodes?
That is a lot of knowledge we would be sharing with the world. Our dream is to get there. So much wisdom, so many pearls from the experts.
Well, yes, lots of wisdom and so many pearls. So we have the perfect person here with us today who has not only recorded over 600 podcast interviews, but is also a mom of 6 kids and is here today to shed lights of the knowledge she has obtained and what she actually uses in her everyday life to keep her and her family's mind, body, and soul healthy.
Wow, I can't wait for this interview. This is going to be so much fun.
Katie Wells, the CEO and the founder of WellnessMama.com and Wellness with an E.com. Her new natural personal care products company, Katie is a mom of 6 with a background of journalism who took her health into her own hands and started researching to find answers to her health struggles. Her research turned into a blog and podcast, and now she's written over 1,500 blog posts. That's a lot of posts.
That's a lot of posts.
A lot.
And 3 books, and has been named one of the 100 most influential person in health and wellness. Her podcast has almost over 600 episodes. And she even wrote the foreword in our mom's latest book. We are so honored.
We are so honored for you to be here with us. We are so incredibly honored as we know you are so busy.
I mean, you went from being a background in journalism to one of the 100 most influential person in the health and wellness. We would love to hear your story.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I adore your mom, and I'm so excited to get to chat with you. And congratulations, 2 years is no small feat, and you guys are so ahead of the curve. I certainly wasn't doing any of this at your age, and very, very impressed with you guys. The short version of my story is that I got really sick myself right about the time I had my first son, which was 15 years ago. And doctors didn't have any answers. And so I turned to my background in journalism to try to research and figure out the answers. And around the same time, I read the statistic in Time magazine that for the first time in 2 centuries, the current generation of American children, which is your guys' generation, would have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And that just wasn't okay with me. I was holding this perfect tiny newborn son of mine, and I wasn't okay with his generation facing all of these problems that this article talked about. And so I simultaneously resolved, I had no idea how I would do it, to figure out what was wrong with me and also to figure out what was wrong with everyone and why everyone was going to face so many of these problems. And that led to a whole lot of research for the last 15 years, and it's still ongoing. And it makes me so incredibly inspired and happy to see people like you guys who are spreading this message now to a whole new generation at such a younger age. And I have so much hope seeing your generation, because I think our generation's going to help, but your generation's going to really fix these problems.
Wow, you are so inspirational. Why should kids care about health now? Or why should a 5-year-old care if they weren't sick?
That's a really, really good question. And I think that's a question wise beyond your years, because most people don't ever think about their health until they get sick. I know I didn't. And they say that, when you don't have your health, that's all you think about. And when you do, you often don't think about it at all. And I think there's so much wisdom in being proactive and thinking about it ahead of time, but it takes that proactive thought because most people don't do it. And one of my mentors in life is someone named Naval Ravikant, who is kind of a modern day philosopher. And he talks a lot about the benefits of compounding. And most people are familiar with the idea of compounding when it comes to maybe interest on a house and finances. But I think compounding is really, really beneficial when we are talking about health because you can gain benefits over time. And most people don't think about it at an early enough age. So you guys might have heard that if you started investing, for instance, at your ages now, by the time you retire, even just investing $100 a month, you would have millions and millions of dollars in the bank because of compounding. But the same is true of our health. And the earlier we invest in it, the more it compounds and the more longevity we have in the long run. And the things you guys choose now will pay off so much more than the things I can choose in my 30s or that someone can choose in their 60s. And there's even studies, really fascinating ones, about how protein quality, for instance, and diet quality in your early life up to about puberty makes a huge difference in your muscle tone, your bone density, your brain activity throughout your whole entire life. So kids are in a really amazing, unique window to sort of front load and compound all of the benefits of health. So us as adults, we can do those things, and I still, of course, recommend them, and they're great. But when kids do it, you get essentially 4 times the benefit that adults can.
I know, right? That's so amazing.
So amazing.
So amazing.
And we hear a lot about how kids need to be happy, right? That's a thing in this world that a kid should be happy. But should a child be more concerned with being happy or healthy?
Another great question. You guys are killing it with the questions. And this is, I think, actually ties into a life lesson that I think even supersedes health, which is that when life gives you an A or B choice, whenever you can, choose both. And I think the other thing to tie in our last question is health and happiness are compounding upon each other. And so it's never an either or. Very, very rarely are you going to get an actual either or choice in life. You can choose both, and you can choose to use them to actually grow each other exponentially. And so it's not in any way an either or. And there's a lot of philosophers who over the years have talked about things like if the search for happiness is in and of itself a source of suffering, but the acceptance of our lives and gratitude of the human condition is a source of happiness. And so I think if as children we could learn, and many of us don't get this opportunity, but if we could learn early on to actually be present, to have gratitude, to be centered, and to make choices that are going to be beneficial in the long term, we would actually get to happiness much more easily. But I think life gives us a lot of misinformation when it comes to what's actually going to make us happy.
100%. Because we've talked about people being so successful, but they don't have you think they'd be happy, but they don't have health. And that's what makes them unhappy eventually. I mean, you have a very busy life. What are your go-to tips for us kids that to stay healthy, and what are the non-negotiables in your life?
Well, the great thing is I have read thousands and thousands of research papers, and they all point back to things that kids can do without needing extra money or any kind of expensive equipment. I think in the health world, there's this kind of tendency right now where people want to get on board with the next really cool supplement or really cool biohacking thing. And those can be great, but those are just an add-on to the actual foundational things. And the foundational things are the things that are the easiest to ignore, but that kids already have a better ability to do and to do well. And so I would put in that category mindset, and any way that you can grow your mindset by staying curious, having gratitude in your life. If you can work in, I know it's a kind of weird concept, but a meditation practice or a spiritual practice of some kind, that really helps you center. And if you build that habit when you're young, it will stay with you your whole life. And beyond that, if you can consume enough protein, like we talked about, the protein and quality of what you eat when you're a kid lasts your whole life long. So that's super, super important, along with hydration and just simple things like choosing water, which is free, over other drinks that might have other stuff you don't even want to drink anyway. And keeping your hydration good, that's going to support your mitochondria. That's going to support every cell in your body. That's going to support your muscle growth. So many of the things that you have this amazing growth phase for when you're a kid. And then I would also say sleep is a big one. And kids, you guys have so many more things going in your favor when it comes to sleep. Your brains are great at it. You have all the neurotransmitters firing in all the right amounts. And that's when you grow. That's when your brain develops. There's really cool science about how when we're sleeping, our brain actually flushes our cerebral spinal fluid and breaks down amyloid plaques in the brain. And this isn't a huge deal when you're a kid, because as you'll find out when you're teenagers, you can get away with a lot because your bodies are just these amazing machines at that age. But when you're older and you don't flush your amyloid plaques, that can lead to things like dementia and Alzheimer's. And so setting up that habit when you're young gives you this amazing foundation for your whole entire life. And once you get those things dialed in, then you can go into the more fun kind of biohacking advanced stuff if you want to. But the beauty is you don't even need to, because that's the 80-20 of really establishing a really good foundation for your health for your whole life.
That is amazing.
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 What are the most important lessons you have learned with interviewing almost 600 guests that us kids can start applying in our lives today?
Another good question. And the answer might not be what you think, because I've had experts from across the board and people who have published research in every area that you can think of. I've had amazing moms. I've had people from around the world. And the commonality that I found in all of them wasn't even what I expected. So many of them mentioned things like gratitude and meditation as the things that actually really drove their happiness and their health and their lives. But a lot of them also mentioned some of these kind of free core foundational things. One very strong commonality among a lot of these guests is the importance of being outdoors, of getting natural light, especially in the morning. So there's really cool science about this too. We have special receptors in our eyes that are triggered by a certain kind of light, especially in the early morning hours. It doesn't cost anything at all. And if you can get outside as soon as possible after you wake up, even for just 10 minutes, you're sending these light signals to these special receptors in your brain that start your circadian clock, which sets your cortisol rhythms, sets your melatonin rhythms for later in the evening. It helps support all of your other hormones that are going to happen, and it costs absolutely nothing. It's also going to give you a lot more energy to do better in school, to play during the day, to just feel better about yourself. And I've probably had 100 guests that have mentioned some form of that out of the 600. Beyond that, I think, like I said, the outdoors and nature being medicine. In Japan, they've done a lot of really cool studies about the actual benefits of being outdoors and what they call nature bathing, as well as things like the camping study, where people who had crazy circadian disruption and couldn't sleep and had insomnia, they had them go camping for a week with no screens, and it entirely fixed their circadian rhythm in 1 week. And for kids, it's even faster because you guys, your bodies, your brains are just firing on all circuits in a growth phase. You have so much in your favor. And then I think sleep is another really big key. And I get that sleep is hard because my kids tell me every night that they don't want to go to bed and they want to stay up and play and hang out. And I get it because they're fun to hang out with and I want to stay up and hang out with them too. But the sleep you get when you're a kid, it really does set a foundation for your whole entire life. And so I would say if you had to boil it down to a few things, when you wake up in the morning, just go outside for 10 minutes and just make a list of all the things in your life you're grateful for. Make sure you're drinking water during the day, prioritize your sleep, spend some time outside, climb a tree if you can, and then fuel your body. Don't ever think of food as a bad thing. Don't attach emotions to food. Just fuel your body and pay attention to how it feels, because right now you have so many great inputs and you're going to really have good data about how food makes you feel. And pay attention to that. It's going to be a lifelong skill for you.
Yeah, and you were talking about nature. I mean, nature is so important. We love to ground and get the vitamins from the sun because it's so beneficial for the body, because we're made to be in nature.
Yeah.
And also sleep. We're made to be able to sleep and basically fix our bodies.
A lot of kids struggle to find these real foods. What advice would you give them?
That's a good question. And you're right. Society does not set things up in your guys' favor for this, because they insult you guys by giving you kids menus that are basically really dumbed down foods that don't even taste that good. And they assume you're only ever going to eat chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese. So the odds are definitely stacked in your favor. And from what I've heard, school lunches aren't that great either. So it does take some extra work. But the beautiful thing I've learned with having 6 kids is that kids are amazingly capable and incredibly smart, and they can adapt really, really quickly. And so I think this step takes a little bit more work. But whether it's if you're having trouble with real food at home and maybe your parents aren't as on board as you are, or at school, you can probably find ways to create compromise that let you have access to real food. And I feel like most parents are really excited and respect if their kids are excited about that. So maybe it's offering to cook together as a family at home, which I know you guys are great about. I see your mom post about you guys cooking together, and that's so awesome. Maybe it's bringing your lunch to school, or even just asking for the healthy foods that you want at home. And so, like I said, this one's not as easy as just going outside in the morning when you first wake up. Takes a little bit more work, but I also know kids are so capable of doing that. And there's some really cool courses. My kids took one called Kids Cook Real Food that teaches you basically all these chef skills and how to cook essentially everything. And then you can do it at home. And I think this is another cool thing for kids is that the whole purpose as parents, when we're raising kids, we want you guys to become self-sufficient, independent humans who are contributing to society, who can function really well. And we don't have to wait till you're 18 to do that. You guys are so amazing and capable. We can teach you these things when you're really, really young, and you can learn even faster than we can.
I know, right? That's so amazing. Our brains are so much. They're still developing, but they're like a sponge. They can soak up everything in, and they're very creative. Like Zan over here, he's very creative.
He's very wild.
New University of Pittsburgh research on mice shows for the first time that the microbes in animals' guts influence what they choose to eat. I mean, they did the research on mice. So mice have they have a complex like gut, but it shows that it influences what to eat, and making some substances that prompt cravings for different kinds of foods. I mean, like lots of kids have food cravings. Sugar is one of them. We have so many. If we go to school, and you can probably see all of the. Kazan, do you know one of the
Yeah,
kids' food cravings?
a lot of people love pizza.
Pizza, the cheese.
Yeah.
Cheese is a big food craving. What are your top tips to help kids with food cravings and their gut health?
This is another good question. And you guys already hit the nail on the head as far as talking about gut health and microbes. Because I think most of us, we think about our human bodies and we think we're just these human bodies because we can see them, we can feel them. But you guys probably know this already. It turns out our bodies are much more bacterial than human. We have many, many more microbes in our body than we do human cells. And so it's not at all, we aren't us. We're not what we eat. We're literally what our guts eat. And most people don't even think about fueling their guts in a healthy way. But your gut controls a whole lot about your cravings. It also controls a whole lot about your immune system and your brain health and so many areas of your life. And I feel like kids aren't often taught how cool their guts are and how much they can do to make sure their guts are healthy and how that makes things like food cravings so much easier. But that doesn't make it any easier in the moment when you're actually having a food craving, because I've had those before too, and they're very real. And the thing is, we have food cravings for a reason. So that's our gut sending us messages. And they might be maybe the wrong messages because we've let our gut kind of get some dysbiosis by not taking care of it correctly. But that process is there for a very important reason. And our biology is designed to send us those messages so that we can survive. So just trying to fight cravings with willpower can be really, really hard. And it can also be a losing battle because as strong as you guys are, as strong as humans are, if we try to fight our hormones and our biology, we will eventually lose because willpower is less strong than all of these years of human survival. So that's a great reason, like you said, to look at your gut and ask the question, how can I actually fix this? And I think this touches on another really important life lesson that supersedes just health, which is the idea of going back to first principles. And first principles are kind of the idea of things we can know without knowing any other information. And if you go down that path long enough, which kids are great at, because it basically means asking the question why over and over and over till you can't ask the question why anymore, that's how you start to get to some of these answers to be able to build better solutions to these problems. That said, food cravings can also really be an important sign. So you might be craving sugar, and it could mean your gut's out of balance, and that could very well be true. It could also mean that maybe you need more healthy carbohydrates to replenish glycogen in your body because kids are so active, or that your liver needs more glycogen because you're growing, or maybe your brain needs that to make serotonin. There's a lot of reasons for that. Even you might be craving chocolate because you actually need magnesium. And there's so much information out there that you can learn about what those cravings could actually mean. So you can actually give your body what it needs, not what you think it wants, just based on the craving. And I'll even say, and I know your mom would probably agree with me, things like chocolate in and of themselves aren't bad. It's about the amount and the type and making sure you're not just eating chocolate. But chocolate does have magnesium. And it also can have the carbs that you might need after you go play a lot. So it's learning to listen to your body and also understand what it really means when it tells you about a craving.
I mean, we love chocolate as well.
Yeah.
And it's probably craving for us, which means we probably need more magnesium.
Yeah.
How do you manage food for your kids at places where all of the junk food is junk?
That's a really good question. And I think my answer might surprise you guys, although I guess your mom and I might be on the same page about that, which is that inherently one of my core beliefs is that kids are incredibly capable of learning and understanding so many things. And that also one of my jobs as a parent is to make sure my kids are able to make good decisions, not to make decisions for them. And in my house, we talk a lot about division of responsibility. And in our house, what that means is it's my responsibility as the mom to make sure we have enough nutritious food available, to make sure they're not going hungry, to make sure we have nutrient dense foods in the house, and then to work with them and we cook those foods. And their responsibility is to listen to their bodies and know if they're actually hungry or not, and to choose if they eat or not. So if my kids tell me they're not hungry, I don't force them to eat. If they don't like a particular food and they tell me they're not hungry just because they don't want to eat it, I respect that because they don't have to eat and they're not going to die from missing one single meal. But the flip side of that is that they're capable, amazing human beings who are able to make their own decisions. So when they're somewhere else that's not my house, that's outside of the bubble of my responsibility. And we've talked since they were babies and educated, and they understand all these things we're talking about how food influences their guts and their brains and their sleep and all that. And at the end of the day, they're their own human beings who get to make those decisions. So if they go to, for instance, a birthday party, and there's cupcakes that have gluten and food dyes and vegetable oils and all the things we would never have in our house, it's their decision if they eat it or not. And I know that they have an educational foundation to know and make an informed choice about what's actually in that and what it could do to their bodies. I also know they're resilient and that if they ate it, they don't have any allergies or reasons they couldn't eat it, that they would survive the consequences of that. And they might also feel bad if they weren't used to eating those foods. So outside of my home, I let that entirely be their decision because I know that when they're adults, I'm not going to be there to tell them what to eat. And I don't want to tell them what to eat. I would much rather respect their natural ability to make decisions and let them, when they're kids, feel the natural consequences sometimes of maybe making a decision I wouldn't have made and maybe not feeling so good. Because that's how we actually learn to make good decisions, is by sometimes making bad ones.
Children with insomnia symptoms are likely to persist with them as young adults and are significantly more likely to develop an insomnia disorder in early adulthood. I mean, you talked about habits as a kid going into being an adult and young adult, but the thing is that this can also be with bad habits, like and issues like insomnia, which is why it's important to fix sleeping schedules and fix these kinds of issues before they grow into being worse and worse as an adult. And according to new research led by scientists at Penn State College of Medicine, and as I talked about, it's a major problem with sleep schedules kids and parents have to deal with. And a major problem for this is electronics, especially the phone and the computer and the TV. What advice do you have for them?
This is another really good question. And I know you guys know because I've heard you guys talk about it, but how artificial light at night confuses our brain. So the same reason that early morning light is really good for us is why screens at night are really confusing to our sleep cycles, because our body gets the message, oh, blue light, it's during the day, I'm supposed to be awake. And kids especially, your bodies are so good that your body and your brain are like, oh, okay, I got to make all the hormones to be awake. And then parents are like, no, it's time to go to bed. But your whole biology is saying, no, it's time to be awake. You just gave me blue light. It's the afternoon. I'm supposed to climb a tree. And so part of this, I think, goes back to the same answer as the last question, which is that it's education and explaining to kids rather than just telling them and forcing them to go to bed, explaining to them why this works and how their choices can affect their sleep and how that does set them up for a whole life and how that can impact their sleep cycles throughout life. And so we have a guideline in our house that after the sun goes down, we don't look at screens anymore. And that means me as a parent, whenever possible, I'm not looking at screens at night, because I think also that's a really important thing for any parents listening is it's one thing to tell our kids something, but it's much more powerful to show our kids something. And you guys probably would agree with that. Like when your parents model something, you pay attention because they're doing it. They care about it. They're walking the walk. And so that means as a family, whenever possible, we put down the screens at night. And that doesn't mean we never have a family movie night. That for sure happens. And it's usually on a weekend, so we can sleep late the next day if we are tired. But it means that after sunset, we put the screens down and we might do Rubik's Cubes or read books or hang out as a family, but we're not going to try to be on screens at night. And so I think this step alone can make a big difference. And people often underestimate it because it's easy sometimes to feel when a food makes you feel bad, because that's a pretty immediate feedback. But when we look at light and then our sleep's maybe a little messed up and it compounds over time, it's harder to connect those dots. So I always say just try it for a few weeks and see if you notice a difference. And if you add in that morning sunlight as well, you can fix your sleep schedule really, really fast, especially when you're a kid. And I know this is a big point because kids feel better when they sleep, and parents for sure feel better when their kids sleep because then they get to sleep. And so I think this has to be a family wide effort where everybody agrees after dark it's family time and we're not going to look at screens.
Wow, great advice.
This was amazing. How do you talk to kids about bullying and trauma, and do you deal with it to prevent long-term effects?
This is another really good question. And unfortunately, I think it's one that you guys in your generation have to face maybe a little bit more than we have in the past. And I think maybe things like social media are contributing to some of these problems we're seeing. And I think there's a kind of two-part answer. The first part is, as a parent, making sure that I raise my kids so that they aren't the ones doing the bullying or creating the trauma. And that's things like, even from a young age, talking them through their actions. And I think this point's really important for parents and for kids, separating the emotion from the action, because emotions are reactions that we have, and they're valid. And I don't ever want to tell my kids not to feel or experience their emotions, because repressing our emotions and shutting them down can have its own consequences long term. So, but that's its own thing, the emotion. And then any action you take as a result of an emotion is its whole separate category. So, as an example, if one of my kids feels angry because a sibling did something they don't like and then punches their sibling in the face, there's two separate things. There's their anger, which is valid, and they shouldn't suppress it. They should get the chance to feel their anger and understand it and talk about it. But that doesn't mean they get to use the expression of that anger to punch their sibling in the face. So I think it's helping kids from a young age be able to separate those things and not telling them like, oh, don't cry, don't be mad, go to your room. But what are you feeling? And where are you feeling it in your body? What does it feel like? And then helping them be able to like feel it, not resist it, and let it go. And then also separate that just because you feel this feeling, you can't say, oh, my sibling made me angry, so I hit him. No, you chose to be angry and you chose to hit him. So separating those two things. And I think also the on the other side of bullying can be a little tougher. And I hear from a lot of parents who have had kids that go through that, and it's really, really tough. And I think even in the adult world, being on the internet, I don't know if your mom's dealt with this, but I hear from people who say really mean things on the internet. And I think people on the internet can say things that we wouldn't say in real life. And so it's partially learning that what I say a lot is what other people think of me is none of my business. And so there's an element of ignoring, but also if someone's doing something actually harmful, being able to set clear boundaries and to either not engage with that person or do whatever you have to do to have the clear boundaries. But I think in both cases, kids being able to have the space to feel their emotions. And I even have my younger kids, when they're really upset about something, I'll have a temper tantrum with them, and we'll have a temper tantrum on the floor, because one of the things I did that was hard for me over time is I had a really tough experience. And instead of feeling the emotions and processing it, I shut it all down and decided I was never going to feel emotions again. And I went 16 years without crying or yelling or having emotions. Turns out that's really bad for your nervous system. And so I didn't want to do that to my kids, where they didn't feel like they could process and feel their emotions. So I encourage them, have the somatic experience. Feel the emotions, feel where it is in your body. Don't use it as an excuse ever to be mean to someone, but feel and validate those emotions. And then on the other side, teaching them the lessons about kindness and how to interact and have good relationships with people and how to communicate. I think things like nonverbal communication and non-confrontational ways of interacting would be really, really helpful skills they could be teaching in schools, and they're not. But there's so many resources to learn those things. So I think it's kind of a two-part answer there.
I mean, you believe in toxic-free living and even made a toxic-free product line. Tell us more about your brand.
Oh, well, thanks for asking this one. So you guys, I know, have talked a lot about on this podcast about how, of course, the food we eat really impacts our bodies. And I think you guys have also mentioned how like what goes on our bodies goes in our bodies. So things we put in our skin, it's our biggest organ. Those things can get in our bloodstream. And a crazy fact is that a lot of babies are born now with hundreds of chemicals in their bloodstream and in their cord blood. And moms have this really cool thing called a placenta that blocks most chemicals from getting in. So the fact that babies are being born with all these chemicals on day one really speaks to how many of them are in our environment. And there can be things like xenoestrogens and hormone disruptors and a lot of these things that we interact with on a daily basis, whether that be cleaning products or air fresheners or personal care products. But the good news is it's actually pretty easy to avoid some of the worst offenders. And this is one area where you actually can take an 80-20 approach, where if you can get rid of 20% of the worst offenders, you get rid of 80% of your exposure. And this was my idea for creating our company called Wellness, which is that most people, especially kids and families, get the majority of their personal care exposure to toxins through hair care and oral care. Because especially with the mouth, they can give us medication that goes under our tongue and it gets in our bloodstream really quickly. So if we're putting nasty stuff in our mouth in the form of toothpaste, it's getting in our bloodstream really, really fast. And most toothpaste actually has a poison control warning, which means if kids eat too much of it, their parents are supposed to call the poison control. And so it was really important for me to create products within those categories that could eliminate all of the toxin exposure and still work as well as other products, because nobody wants to have teeth that don't feel clean or hair that doesn't feel clean. So that's where I started. And it really came from a place of wanting to make sure families could have healthy products without having to go through any more effort.
We use the toothpaste regularly and can't wait to try the strawberry flavor.
We love it.
Love it.
Love it. What is one thing kids can do today to improve their health?
Well, thank you guys for your kind words about the toothpaste. I'll make sure we send you some strawberries to thank you, because this has been one of the more fun episodes I've ever gotten to do. I think a lot of the things we talk about are all things kids can do to improve their health. And I think if you had to pick one thing, I would say stay really curious, because if you ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And kids today, one advantage to this crazy technological social media generation is that you have access to literally 10 times the Library of Alexandria at your fingertips all the time. And all the information is out there. And if you have great parents like you guys do who can help you find really good sources, you can learn anything and everything almost overnight. And actually, when we look at blue zones, two of the things that correlate to people having the healthiest, longest lives are having some kind of curiosity that's driving their passion and their purpose. And also, the second one I would add is having really strong community. So people who have really strong relationships in their lives tend to live longer and be healthier across the board. And then beyond that, one tip I really love to say for kids, and that I do with my kids, is in the morning, write down things you're grateful for. And at night, ask yourself questions like, what was I grateful for today? What hard things did I try today? And what did I learn today? Because I think while everything physical health is really, really important, your mindset drives your physical health. And so if you can cultivate your mindset carefully, then you're going to have a great foundation for your whole life.
Wow, Miss Katie. That was probably one of the most powerful episodes we have done. This was amazing.
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 Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Well, you guys are amazing. This is one of the most fun episodes I've ever done. And I am Wellness Mama everywhere on the internet. My website is wellnessmama.com, and the podcast is the same name. And then the company you guys mentioned is wellness.com, which is wellness with an E on the end.
That is so inspiring.
Inspiring.
Make sure everyone to follow Wellness Mama on social media, and Miss Katie's book is a must get. Subscribe to our podcast today as well as ours.
Thank you so much, Miss Katie.
Thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are great interviewers, and I'm so impressed what you guys have already done. I'm very excited to keep following you guys.
Okay, I think the internet's back.
Were we glitchy?
Yeah, we
Oh,
were.
I can hear you guys.
Let's recap Miss Katie's key points. Miss Katie is a wealth of knowledge. We as kids have so much in our favor, and there is so much we can do to help us set us up for the rest of our lives. Parents help us understand these healthy habits instead of forcing it upon us, and it is more powerful to show us, not just tell us. Key foundational things are important to set yourself up for success. These may seem like small things, but these are huge things that will make a huge impact in our future's health.
Mindset is important. Grow your mindset by staying curious. Become centered with meditations and gratitude. When you ask better questions, you'll get better answers. Ask yourself, what are you grateful for every day?
Get early morning sunlight every day. That will help you get more energy and feel better in the morning. Get outdoors in nature. Climb a tree. Just get out, even if it is 10 minutes. And even we love to say things we are grateful for when we are outside.
We are what our gut eats. Focus on the quality of your food and make sure to eat protein and vegetables. And don't underestimate the power of real food. Learn about how awesome your gut is, and that will help you choose better foods. Listen to your body, as sometimes your body needs foods that you're craving. Like chocolate has magnesium in it, so maybe you need magnesium. So learn to read your body and find out what it actually needs.
Make sure you are hydrated. That is going to support your body.
And sleep is important for a body to grow and develop, and you can even get rid of the waste in your brains. Setting up that habit when you are young, that sets you up for your entire life. Remember, artificial light can mess up your sleep and make you think that it's actually morning time. After sunset, put the electronics down and it can make a big difference.
It is important to feel your emotions, validate those emotions, and learn about kindness and how to communicate. Use toxic-free products like Miss Katie's amazing wellness products.
With an E.
They are amazing. They are a must get today.
Make these healthy habits a family-wide effort. Kids will listen to what we do, then we will say more than we will say. Each and every one of us has the ability to change the world from the inside out. So start with these simple tips today to change the world one child at a time.
Thank you so much, Miss Katie. We are so thankful for your time today.
Thank you all for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this is very fun.
Very fun.
Very fun.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zain Sari.
I'm Dula.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom MD, and look out for my mom's The Holistic RX, your guide to healing chronic inflammation and disease, and newer books, The Holistic RX for Kids, Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World, that Miss Katie wrote the foreword to, an amazing children's book we wrote together called Adam's Healing Adventures, The Power of Rainbow Foods. So check it out on Amazon. Yay! We have a special gift for everyone listening because we're almost at our 2-year mark. We want to give you all a special dessert cookbook. We know most kids love sweets, so we put our favorite recipes just for you. Check it out on the description of this podcast. Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast in iTunes and leave a review so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthier future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kid Show, where kids are empowering kids.
Thank you, everyone.